Welcome back in to another episode of ROC Boys Football. We are taking a little break from the 2022 NFL Draft and looking forward to the 2022 college football season. We're just going to be taking a look at some of the coaching hires. It's been crazy, not just with the portal, but also the coaches have been moving around like crazy. We're going to talk about probably the 6 biggest hires that we've seen in this offseason, and we're starting with our Tier 1 grades for coach hires. Start with Mario Cristobal. Dill, I know you're a big fan of Mario Cristobal. Heading back home to Miami. Give us a little vibe of why you have him as a Tier 1, what you think he brings to the Hurricanes that have been struggling as of late.
I think what Miami hasn't been able to do is hasn't been able to recruit the state like they used to. Like they're losing kids to Bama, Georgia, Florida State, and they're not locking the area up. And that's what made the U the U. When it was fun and it was buzzing, everybody in Miami dreamed of going to Miami, and that's just really doesn't seem to be the case really since like early 2000s. So I think what you're getting in Cristobal is an elite, high-powered recruiter. I don't think he's like an X's and O's guy,
He's
like
not.
a Lincoln Riley type guy, but he's a high-powered recruiter. He's coming back to his home turf, and I think he might be able to bring the excitement back that you've been lacking with guys like Manny Diaz and Al Golden and some of these coaches who just were kind of – it never felt like they were bringing back the U spirit.
And I also, one other thing is, I think that team is a little bit of a tighter ship. Transfers, like disciplinary stuff. Mario Cristobal did a great job of that in Oregon. Like he ran a tight ship, didn't have a lot of transfers, didn't have a lot of discipline problems, not a lot of suspensions. And you said the most. I mean, college football comes down to how well you can recruit. Manny Diaz not only was doing that poorly, but he also it didn't seem like a very tight ship there. I think Mario Cristobal is going to be the guy to kind of.
They also haven't been able to develop linemen at any point. Like they have athletes, and it's just like when they go up and bump against a Clemson or a Bama, they look way overmatched on the lines of scrimmage. And I think that's what Mario Cristobal. I mean, he's an offensive line guy, and he has good O lines in Oregon. And Oregon
was pumping him out.
Oregon wasn't even like a great fit for him in my mind because he is a recruiting first guy, and you can recruit to Oregon, but you can't recruit to Oregon like I think you can at Miami if you really have it going.
Yeah.
And Oregon more has always won on scheme. They've had kind of the more genius X and O's coaches who don't recruit at the supreme level, but run a really innovative offense. I don't think that's exactly Cristobal's game, and it's not a style. So I think he's coming to a much better situation from a place he honestly did a very good job in Oregon. So it's not like he was failing there.
One other thing I want to note is, like you mentioned, he's not an X's and O's guy, but he's surrounding himself with just phenomenal assistants. I mean, Josh Gaddis is a tremendous hire. Obviously, one of the best assistant coordinators in the country last year. I think his scheme is going to work out a little bit better in Miami. Like he wanted to get the speed and space. And him and Jim clashed a little bit with how they wanted that offense to look. Oh, yeah. I think Mario Cristobal is going to get hands off, run the offense how you want to run it. They got a really good young quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke. I'm also really excited about that running back, Jalen Knighton. I mean, that dude is just absolutely electric. So they got some running backs and just some athletes around in that program that I think Josh Gaddis and Mario Cristobal are really going to be able to use. And one other thing I want to know is he's changing like the outlook on Miami. Like they are starting to pour money into that program. In past years, they weren't doing that. I want Credit Cover 3 podcast. They called it the crypto ball, Mario Crypto Ball. Like the crypto people have done well in crypto in Miami are like funding this program. So that was kind of like an interesting take, but no matter how they get the money, like they are starting to get that football program backed financially, which is literally the number one thing you need. Let's move on to Lincoln Riley and Brent Venables. We'll talk about them in both. I'm going to kick it to you because I know you have strong takes on this. We both gave them Tier 1 grades. Who do you want to start with and tell us why you have a Tier 1 grade on them?
I mean, I personally am way more excited about Venables just because I feel like he actually wants to be at Oklahoma. And I'm not sure you could say the same thing about Lincoln Riley. I don't think it was his place. it obviously was never his team. He didn't build that. It was always going to be like he was just getting the torch passed from Bob Stoops, and I think he wanted out of the shadow and to go to more of the Pac-12 spread out kind of game. I don't think he liked coaching physicality. They were never a physical team. And
let's be fair, he left because they're going to the SEC. And his brand of football isn't going to translate to the SEC. It's just it's Big 12 is more like the Pac-12 with the speed and space. Now,
I do think that had a part of it, but I think in my opinion, I think the big thing was he wanted it out of the shadow, and I know he'll never admit that, and I don't believe anything that comes out of his mouth.
Me neither. He's a rat.
He's totally full of it.
He's a good coach.
Like
he's a little rat.
When he said that he's not taking Oklahoma players, he's taking portal players. Like, how do you even say that with like a straight face? It's just a stupid thing to say. So disingenuous.
And he belongs in Hollywood. Smell you. Like, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, just
he's full of it. That program's full of it. Like, go do your thing together and see if you can make it work. I don't know. No one's been able to make it work.
From the coaches too. I mean, took the strength coach, took the DC, took a lot of like the assistants that were really fundamental.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing, and I think I thought the way he left was like the worst.
And then all of a sudden, the recruits, all of a sudden are like it was almost like he was like counting guys.
Oh yeah. I only talked to USC after the Oklahoma State game. Like, please, you had this
2 hours later.
Probably had this like mocked up since the beginning of the year because he coached a horrible season. So.
Yeah, and then let's talk about Brent Venables. I gave this a tier 1 Harvey because of exactly what you were saying. I mean, if you want to coach like physicality on defense, like Brent Venables is that guy. One thing you worry about is obviously he's getting the keys to a top tier program, having never been the head dog. There's a lot more to comes to.
Yeah, but he's been turning head coaches' jobs down. He worked for Stoops and obviously Dabo for forever. So he's been around like true greatness in the coaching world.
I agree. And he's seen how it's done. And no doubt he was having like head coach like administrative responsibilities at Clemson. They were paying him pretty much like a head coach there. And I think he's the perfect guy for making that transition.
And he wants to be there too, which is huge. He wants to play SEC ball. He's
probably the only program he would have left for. Because I mean, he was turning. You're right. I mean, every single.
He must have turned down every ACC job. Like he must have been getting huge offers in the ACC.
And he's bringing that like a little bit more of that physicality, hard nosed, like mentality to Oklahoma.
And lest we forget, he's bringing Levy from Ole Miss, so that's a huge hire because. Obviously, he's not an offensive guy, but he's bringing in one of the top OCs who just coached with arguably one of the best play callers in college football right now in Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I think and when you're looking at where these guys are going, like you want to see them surround themselves with assistants that are going to be able to maximize their ability to coach this team. And I think hiring an OC like that will certainly do that.
Yeah, so I'm
excited. I'm an OU fan right now. Like I'm an OU fan in 2020.
I want them to stick it to Lincoln. And I will say, in fairness to Lincoln, I think it's a very good hire for USC. You are still getting one of the top tier coaches. Yeah. And that program certainly needs it. I think Clay Helton, like it's hard to say if he probably was never a fit at USC. They want
Lincoln Riley's a fit.
A big personality in Lincoln, and I mean, he's like diva. He obviously can't be totally trusted, which is clear, but I don't know. I think it's still he still becomes immediately the best head coach in that conference, I would say. And,
by far. I mean, he's a great coach. I just hate him.
Obviously a fertile recruiting ground, and
that's what they need.
If he can get it back on the right foot, he can do it. I am a little skeptical because like he's not the first Lincoln Riley to end up there. Sarkisian, Kiffin, all failed. Yeah. So it's not like we haven't seen a Lincoln Riley kind of clone with those two. I think they're both very similar, and they obviously did horrible. So
he hasn't built up a program. Like he took Oklahoma, like they were like what Jim Harbaugh said about Ryan Day. Like he was on third base. He's starting at home plate right now, or maybe first base. He did a good job. Obviously getting some guys in the portal, Caleb Williams, Mario Williams. That being said, they still have a lot of work to do. And
It's not like those guys lit it up either.
And they need to get that offensive line figured out because it was.
And that's not Lincoln's thing anyway, so we'll see.
Let's move to the tier 2 guys. Brian Kelly, I was very close to giving a tier 1 grade on. I mean,
Brian Kelly's a tier 1 coach and a tier 2 fit.
That's exactly.
It's just a weird fit, and he obviously doesn't know how to handle himself. And he's being weird, and
he's being a weirdo. Yeah, I mean that's just what it is.
And talking like he's from Louisiana. He's not.
That being, I mean, he's literally like a Catholic Northeast white guy, and he's like coming down, and he's gonna figure it out. I really think so. At LSU, you pretty much get the pick your crop at a Louisiana State in recruiting.
High talent.
You pretty much get whoever you want. You look at like the top 10 players from Louisiana every year in high school. 8 of them go to LSU. I think that'll continue. It is very hard to win consistently at a program, and Brian Kelly's won everywhere he's gone. He won at Cincinnati. He goes to Notre Dame, and they were consistently a top 5, top 10 team every single year, making multiple college football playoff appearances. And he leaves because he thinks that he's just capped there at Notre Dame, and that might be true. Like LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, like you can kind of recruit that elite guys that maybe Notre Dame has some restrictions on. So I get the move. Weird fit. He's a good coach. I think
it's a clear tier. I think he's an obvious tier 1 coach. Like he's been super successful at a program that's hard to win at.
It's a rocky start.
It's just, I still like, it's so weird. He's just being so weird. He's being so weird.
It's weird too, because like you've done this before. Like why he's just trying so hard. He's trying so hard, and it's just we'll see. I think he'll settle.
And he's gonna have to go challenge the big dogs. Like it's like to succeed at LSU, you kind of gotta beat Alabama. You gotta beat Ole Miss, and
he's not used to playing those. He's used to hiding.
And that's a program. Talk about getting gutted. I mean, they had like 30 scholarship guys by the end of the year. So
yes. He's
not hit the portal particularly hard, I feel like. I mean,
a little bit. Kane. There's some other guys, but it hasn't been great. I think one other thing to note is they needed a like leader to again, like similar to Mario Cristobal, like tighten the ship a little bit. He's going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
At Ogeron, as good of like a magical year he had, like he was a little bit loose with it, and it showed. Once
he obviously lost control. That was
pretty clear. Control of that program pretty good. Let's move on to Marcus Freeman, who I also have a tier 2 grade on. And one of the few tier 2 as we like rank these coaches, and we'll have a couple more episodes talking about some other guys. He's one of the only tier 2 guys that I'll have ranked so highly at having never really coached the program. He's getting the keys to one of the biggest programs in the country, having never been a head coach. That being said, I like the hire because Notre Dame was humming along, and you don't really want to rock the boat too much. You get Marcus Freeman, who was clearly popular with the players. You saw when he got a best coach, like the guys were fired up.
Yep,
they finished out strong. You might have saw a little like weakness in like the.
I think Tommy Rees is going to stick with him, which was also I think really big. So he's
really good.
I think what Marcus Freeman's doing is obviously very much unknown as a coach, or at least on the head coaching level, similar to Venables. But
he's shown he's a
but
good coach.
But it seems like the players love him, and he's in a great fit at this point because he's getting a program that is really kind of peaking, if you will.
I just wish they might have paired him up with a little bit more experience, because then he comes and Tommy Rees's thing, but he's also a guy who's relatively young and inexperienced, and it's a bunch of young guys shooting from the hip.
That's the difference with like a Venables. Like Venables is getting a program too, but he's obviously much older and been around the block.
Been around it,
great coaches.
He's been around it. And then they lose their 10-year veteran on the defensive line. The defensive line coach heads up to Michigan. He was a guy who's been in the program for a while. So there's a lot of question marks, but there's a lot of things I like about Marcus Freeman. And he seems like a guy, if I was a sick athlete, which I'm very far from that, I'd want to go play for Marcus Freeman. Last one that we got.
I agree. And I think much more of it is just his ability, if he can maintain where they're at, like he wins, if you will.
I agree with that. Last one that we'll talk about, Billy Napier. I gave a tier 3 grade, and I don't really get that fit. They fired Dan Mullen pretty early, and they kind of had their choice and they go get a guy who, I mean, yeah, he was a good non-Power 5 head coach. Pretty good. I mean, he was no Luke Fickell, but he was pretty good. And then they give him the keys to like another program that's one of the biggest programs in college football at the University of Florida. I just have a lot more questions than I do answers about Billy Napier. Again, he's a guy who does run a little bit of a tight ship, and I think Florida needed that again. And so we're seeing some guys where like you want to tighten it up a little bit, go get a guy who's shown he can tighten up programs. But he's never even been in a program that's had this like this sort of status and this magnitude. Now he's getting the keys to it.
Yeah, he's never really been an OC of a high performing team. He was the OC at Clemson in 2010 year, which obviously they were not great. And then again at
they were not
Arizona State. And Arizona State obviously has never really been performing since Herm got there. So I think my biggest concern is that he's never really killed it at a big job. And obviously it's like, it's so hard to judge these non-Power 5s. Like obviously it worked for Notre Dame with Brian Kelly.
And the Raging Cajuns were not in a strong conference. Like they were not. It wasn't like a Cincinnati.
It wasn't Cincinnati. That's
they were
true.
building and playing some good guys, like playing Notre Dame, like playing Alabama, and
They
competing.
basically played Appalachian.
That was their biggest. I think that was their biggest win, maybe Coastal. But again, like that is just like that is a AA football compared to the SEC.
Yeah, for sure it is.
And now he's going to be going up against some of the best coaches and best players. Questions about recruiting. It's just there's not a ton of like.
He'll recruit better than Dan Mullen because Dan Mullen didn't even try. But
that was always weird to me when they asked him about.
I don't recruit in season. I don't recruit in season like Dan Mullen. Shut up and do what everyone else does.
And they have a lot of questions like going into this year. Like quarterback. I mean, they bring in Jack Miller from Ohio State, Anthony Richardson, and Emory Jones decides to stay.
That is weird. It's so weird what's going on there, but
it's like two of those guys are going to transfer in the spring. I think you go with Emory Jones, maybe Jack Miller stays, but Anthony Richardson's gone. He's not going to sit another year. You go with Anthony Richardson, Emory Jones is gone, and then maybe Jack Miller's gone. And you go with Jack Miller, they're probably both gone. And so it's just.
He's an inherit. They better be like ready to be patient because he's inheriting a dumpster fire a little bit. Yeah. Unlike these other guys who are, Lincoln Riley's not, but
Mario Cristobal and Lincoln Riley might be the other two that are. I'm optimistic about Miami because they got a lot of young guys who are really special.
Miami really wasn't horrible this year. Like they weren't good, but he's not. It's no USC. Like they were decent.
Florida was like bad towards the end of the year.
And Florida was bad, and it was like going very south very fast.
And I'm not right on a lot of things. Like I miss on a lot of things, but before the season, it seemed like Dan Mullen was losing control a little bit. I mean, you got people throwing shoes.
He did lose control.
Fight. Got people going out and party, and then in season. They all went to like a Halloween party and all got COVID before like I think the South Carolina game. And it's just like you saw this coming, and then
No, you were right. That was a gong show this year. So
I wonder where Dan Mullen's gonna pop up because I don't think he's a horrible coach, but it just goes to show like stuff that Brian Kelly did and Lincoln Riley to an extent. Like it's hard to consistently win, and when you have a down year, figure out how to get it back up. He couldn't figure out how to get it back up, and they couldn't really wait on it. They had to let him go. I think if it didn't get that bad, I think they would.
It was a good move. They did have to fire him. I mean, I don't know what he was doing. He just lost his mind. He's just lost.
Him and Edo were very similar. Like they were like cooking. They had a few good years, but it just seemed like
they both caught like little hits of like elite talent that just happened to coincide together, like with the Pitts, Tony. Trash kind of unit, and then similar with obviously LSU just had every good player in the country at the year they hit, so you couldn't basically lose with those teams. It just like but you need to show the Nick Saban, Dabo, Urban consistency where you can be 11-win team year in and year out, and that just didn't seem like that was going to be Dan Mullen. You're right.
Yeah, that's
So we'll see with Billy Napier because it's again.
but
a
that's
guy
the thing is it's a we'll see where it's like these other guys. Like I'm very confident that the ship's gonna either get righted or stay on course in the sense that like Marcus Freeman, Brent Venables,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Billy
I
Napier is a
agree with that.
lot of questions and there's not a lot of like answers. There's not a lot of things that you're like, oh, he's gonna come in and recruit at a super high level. Okay, maybe.
And it's probably the least attractive program besides maybe Miami. I think Miami, Florida could
I'd take
argue,
Florida
but
in the SEC probably. But it's hard to
as a
win.
worse situation, yeah, no, it's so hard,
There.
especially with Georgia right now. And it's hard to recruit, frankly, because Georgia's right in your backyard.
Yeah. Well, that's a review on our top maybe 6. It's not even our top 6 hires because we have some other hires that we're really high on, but probably the top 6 programs. We're gonna be talking about Oregon. We're gonna be talking about
These were the
Washington.
biggest 6 names in my mind, just in terms of like you're looking at the big jobs. These were the big open jobs in my mind.
Oh yeah, easily the biggest programs. I mean, Oregon maybe has a debate, but I think they're still a step below. Anyways, appreciate you guys rocking with us. We're going to be doing a little bit of a break from the 2022 NFL draft. Start looking at the 2022 college football season. We'll be back with the draft as pro day combine start heating up. But as usual, appreciate you guys rocking with us, and we'll be back with more content later. Peace, y'all.